I want to give Darrell Lewis, who was an important part of the trial team, an opportunity to address you as well. Then there are some important people that I also want to introduce to you, and some of them may have some comments also.
Good afternoon, everybody. And as Jack said, thank you all for coming out. Let me make it clear from the start. We support, we respect all good, hard-working, dedicated, and determined police officers throughout this community, throughout this state, and across this nation, who work hard to protect and serve us all. And that's the majority of police officers. However, when you have police officers who also commit wrongs, clearly wrong, and violate the rules to protect the safety of us all, it makes good police officers shudder. Police misconduct in this community, in this state, in this country, it must stop. It can't stop if verdicts go unpaid. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office will not listen, as Jack indicated in a speech just recently made. They haven't even apologized unless they are made to pay this verdict. When there is a culture and it doesn't change from the inside, then good people have to change it from the outside. And no one will cheer more than the good police officers on the inside who are sick to death of seeing a few bad police officers in this community, in this state, and across this country ruin the reputation of good, hard-working police officers who put their lives on the line every day for all of us to protect and serve us all. It also makes it harder for good police officers to do their jobs. Because when people don't trust the law enforcement officers that are good and that are trying to help and want to do good and follow the rules, it makes their job harder. Now, if our Florida legislature, and at some point in time we will appeal to the legislature, to request respectfully that they pass a claims bill for the full amount of the verdict, that a jury, as Jack said, listen to all of the evidence. They know more about the case than anybody. And said, in this case, Deputy Lynn, you were wrong. And so if our legislature doesn't enforce the verdict, bad behavior is bad behavior spread, and bad behavior spread is bad behavior made worse. Just like when you deal with bad behavior, it sends a message that it's okay. And you have a department that documents bad behavior. They can change, but they have to be made to change. And they will change when our legislature says that, yes, you will have to pay this verdict, and we enforce this verdict in full. So it is my humble belief that the best thing that could happen to all of us in this community and in the Palm Beach Sheriff's Department is this verdict. And I say that because it will mean that the great majority of all the good police officers in this community will rise to the top, and their conduct will become the standard by which everybody is measured. So that when people across this country are looking at us in Florida, they will know, because this case has garnered national attention. And everybody is watching. And everybody is watching, how will Florida handle this situation? How will this legislature handle this situation? The job of the government, above all else, above all party constituents, above all political consideration, is to do one thing, and that is to protect us all. Protect all of her citizens. Everything else comes second, and in this case, the jury has said what justice should be, and to protect the citizens, the jury has spoken justice in order to protect this citizen. All the legislature needs to do to protect this citizen is to simply validate this verdict rather than erecting a barrier by saving, as Jack said, this young man's life. To support this jury, you save this young man, and I would suggest that is the highest calling of our legislative body. There is nothing to be said for denying this citizen except for political consideration. This is a case that the vast majority and the public in Florida and across this country is waiting to see whether our legislature is there for the benefit of the people or for the benefit of political expedience, to see whether public safety outweighs political expedience, and ultimately to see whether the legislature has the respect of its constituents. So this is about respect. Respect for this young man, respect for the good, decent police officers who are in our families, who are our friends, who we know and socialize with every day. So you have to ask, and we will, is the legislature going to be there for the people? Or are they not? The legislature has been given excellent guidance in this case. And what is that guidance? The jury that was selected and approved by everybody. And this jury came in with no dog in the fight. They dedicated themselves and decided by this verdict that this is one of the most egregious abuses of a citizen, and we're simply going to ask the legislature to support what its own neutral citizens in the form of this jury said the verdict is justice. So that good officers feel good about doing their jobs and showing good officers that the only alternative, if the legislature wipes out what the jury said, is that bad officers will feel that the legislature has given them a license and permission to go on being bad police officers. And that should make us all shudder. And so, we're not asking anybody to fix all the problems. We're just asking, and we will ask the legislature to let this neutral jury fix this problem once and for all, and we're only asking that they hold police officers accountable, because when you're wrong, you're wrong. And the legislature has the power to accept what this neutral jury said by requiring and validating the full amount of this verdict. And so with that said, Anything less compromises justice. Anything less compromises public safety. And I humbly believe it compromises the will of all good people. So thank you very much for giving me that opportunity to say a few words, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Scarola. And we've got several people here that we want to give an opportunity to say a few words, but thank you.
Dontrell, when we're introducing important people, let's start with your family, if we could. Would you introduce your brothers to the folks who are here? And would each of you stand up as Dontrell introduces you?
His name is Dontrell Stephens.
How everybody doing today?
That's my youngest brother. His name is Dontrell Stephens. That's the oldest. His name is Eric White. He the second oldest.
I told you that over the course of the last 2.5 years, I have come to recognize the courage and strength of Dontrell. I have also come to recognize the courage and strength of his brothers, who have been single-handedly undertaking an enormous task of providing, as best they could under the circumstances, care for Dontrell. That task has become even more difficult since the recent death of their mother. So I express my thanks, because you folks have been doing the work that all of us have a responsibility to do for your brother. Thank you. I did tell you that there were some important people in the audience who are here to demonstrate their support for Dontrell and their commitment to see that justice is ultimately done for Dontrell. Mr. Burns Guillaume, President of the F. Malcolm Cunningham Bar Association. Could you stand up, Burns? Thank you very much. Brassford Smith, Esquire, General Counsel of the Urban League of Palm Beach County. Brassford, thank you for being here. I introduced earlier Yvette Simmons. Yvette, as I said, is Dontrell's court-appointed guardian of the property of Dontrell. It will be her responsibility in the event that any money is ultimately paid on this judgment to administer those funds, to see that Dontrell's financial interests are properly protected. Councilman Lawrence Gordon, Vice Mayor of the town of Haverhill. Thank you, Councilman Gordon. Dan Calloway, Athletic Director of the Youth Recreation Association of Palm Beach County, and a esteemed local leader in the black community. Artie Williams of Mothers Against Murders, and Father Frank O'Loughlin, Executive Director of the Guatemalan Maya Center. And I would ask if any of those of you who have just been introduced have anything at all to say, we would be happy to give you the microphone. Anyone like to make any comments at all? Councilman Gordon, this is okay.
Yes. Thank you. It gives me absolutely no pleasure to be here today, but I strongly felt that I needed to be here to support Mr. Stephens and to call upon the Sheriff Department to do the right thing. Unfortunately, we're having these kinds of meetings too often. So clearly, there is a systemic problem with the Sheriff's Office. Now, I'm not here to dump on all police officers, because there are some great police officers who work very hard to help this community. and we appreciate them all. But clearly, there needs to be better training, better observation. These things need to be done. There needs to be some corrections. And we're asking that the Sheriff's Department step up, make these corrections, and stop making excuses. Once every now and then, I understand. But consistently, not accepting responsibility for these serious problems, ruining the life of a young man like Mr. Stephens, something has to change. Now, the people have spoken in the form of a jury. One of the most important institutions that we have in this democracy is trial by jury. The people have spoken. The jury has spoken. Sheriff, I'm asking that you accept this responsibility. When any of us does something wrong, we have a duty and a responsibility to stand up, admit that wrong, and do everything within our power to correct it. Not only should there be an apology from the Sheriff's Department, but the Sheriff's Department should be leading the charge to Tallahassee, asking the legislature to do the right thing by Mr. Stephens and give him the funds that he needs to have some quality of life for his remaining years. It's not complex. So again, I'm a fan of good police officers, and I'm asking that the Palm Beach County Sheriff Department step up and do the right thing. And I thank you for your time.
Father Frank.
Well,
I've never known you to turn down an opportunity like this.
I'll let's complain about long sermons, but Dontrell, we're heartbroken for you, and we promise you today that we are in your camp, and that people of this county will fight to see that justice is done. I came today with Augusto, who is a young Guatemalan man who called for a police officer one night when people were breaking into his vehicle, and the officer came and smashed him, pummeled him unconscious. When he recovered consciousness, he was in JFK hospital. And we never got to explain that I'm the one who called you. Not only the hospital staff, but the police officers who came to write it up, everyone said to him, you mustn't let this go. You mustn't let this go. And he didn't know what to do about it. When he got back home, he still got the phone call. So there are people inside the system. There are officers inside the Sheriff's Department who cannot tolerate what's going on. When we discovered that the officer who had done this violence, had 20 use of force incidents in the previous 18 months, including a shooting, we realized that our problem wasn't simply with a rogue deputy. Our problem was with his superiors. Impunity seems to be the brand of our Sheriff's Department. There are lots of officers inside the department who are taking issue with it, but they're doing it sub rosa, with phone calls like those that Gustavo received. It's time we did better. It's time we made this terrible, terrible thing here lead us to look for reform. Community policing. Simple solutions.
We would be happy to entertain any questions anyone might have. I should comment that we have a press package that we can make available to all of you who are here. And there are some things in there that I think would be very helpful to you in understanding the outrage that we feel over the injustice done to Dontrell. They include excerpts from the testimony of Deputy, now Sergeant Lynn, having been promoted and reassigned as a training officer within the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. So there are excerpts from his sworn testimony. There are excerpts from the testimony of other officers within the department, including officers who were responsible for conducting the internal affairs investigation with regard to this case. Officers who, when they were deposed in the civil litigation and shown the dash cam video, expressed great surprise at the fact that the dash cam video directly contradicted Deputy Lynn's testimony that he had a clear and unobstructed view of both of Dontrell Stephens' hands, and both of Dontrell Stephens' hands were empty. Who expressed surprise over the fact that Dontrell Stephens held his cell phone in his right hand the entire time and never could have transferred his cell phone from his right hand to his left hand, reached behind his back in order to make the transfer, and then lunged in the direction of Deputy Lynn with a black object that Deputy Lynn could have reasonably mistaken for a handgun. They never saw those things on the dash cam video. They never confronted Deputy Lynn during the course of the internal affairs investigation with any of the contradictions between that physical evidence or the objective evidence involved in the bullet wounds and the location of those bullets still in Dontrell's body. But most incredible of all, when in the history of law enforcement has there ever been a competent investigation of a shooting where the shooting victim has survived and is capable of communicating, and the investigating officers responsible for determining the circumstances of that shooting never, ever made any attempt to talk to the victim? The only way anything like that happens is if there is a predetermination that this is a justified shooting without regard to what the facts may be. And unfortunately, those kinds of defective internal investigations, those failures of oversight for those responsible for overseeing the process outside the sheriff's office, have been demonstrated to constitute a pattern. That pattern is extraordinarily dangerous to all of our freedoms, and it needs to be changed. So that concludes any prepared remarks that I have. As I said, there's a great deal of information included in the press package, and any of you who have an opportunity to take a look at that after this press conference is over and have any questions about any of the content, we would welcome follow-up questions from you. We consider this to be extremely important. We are happy to devote our attention to it and devote our attention to it generously. So don't hesitate to contact our office if there are questions that you think of or that arise later as a result of the materials that we provided to you. And with that, if you have any questions now, we would be happy to entertain those questions. For me, for Dontrell, for any of the others who are present, for Darrell, anyone at all.
So would you say the purpose of this today is to, are you calling on the sheriff's office as well as legislators to uphold the jury verdict?
The purpose of this today is to alert the community to its responsibility to Dontrell Stephens. The fact that that responsibility has not yet been fulfilled simply by the rendering of a judgment that is a promise of justice, but is not yet justice itself. That's the first purpose, to let everyone in this community know that Dontrell Stephens' life hangs in the balance. He has managed to survive for the last 2.5 years. But this process may take 2.5 more years or 5 more years, or if the pattern on the part of the legislature with regard to the manner in which it deals with claims bills persists, it could take a decade. And that's just not fair. That's just not justice. I'm not sure what the solutions to the problem may be. I suggest that we as a community, we as a state, need to re-examine the entire rationale behind sovereign immunity. The concept that the king can do no wrong is an anachronism that has long outlived any rational justification in this society. That needs to be re-examined. The concept that it can take years following the completion and the successful completion of an appellate process to get the legislature to address a claims bill, that needs to be carefully examined, closely scrutinized, and hopefully promptly changed. And cases like this focus a spotlight on those injustices and inequities and can provide a springboard to the kind of change that needs to be made. It's hard for me to believe that if the general population understands the predicament that Dontrell remains in as a consequence of those procedural issues, that the community will not be greatly offended by them and will not express its sentiment that changes need to be made. So the purpose of this conference is to start a conversation that is long overdue, a conversation on which Dontrell's life does depend.
Yeah, and you talked about Dontrell Stephens. You mentioned that his life really depends on this. Is there anything very specific to your medical struggle that that you're referring to with that quote?
Oh, there are some very specific things. Right now, the only medical care that Dontrell gets is reactive medical care in a local hospital emergency room. When his catheter needs to be changed, when he has a raging infection as a consequence of failure to receive appropriate care, when he is suffering from stage 2 bed sores, decubitus ulcers, that within 48 hours can progress to stage 4, life-threatening decubitus ulcers, those are medical emergencies. Christopher Reeves, Superman, died from decubitus ulcers. And it's hard to imagine that anyone was getting better medical care than he received. So even under the best of circumstances, the condition that Dontrell is in right now is a life-threatening condition. When you rob him of access to quality medical care, you are putting his life in danger every single day. So yes, there are very specific things that need to be done. And a great start would be if the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office said, you know what, we've changed our minds. We respect the decision of that judge and that jury, and we'll at least pay the $200,000 that the law says we are obliged to pay as the sovereign immunity cap. There's a good start. There's an opportunity for Dontrell in the immediate future to begin to receive some of the medical care that he needs. So yes, there is a specific purpose of this press conference, and it is to urge the sheriff of Palm Beach County to accept responsibility for the victimization of Dontrell Stephens and to at least pay that $200,000 tomorrow. Not a year and a half from now, after a frivolous appeal has run its course. And I suggest to you that it is a frivolous appeal because there are no viable legal issues, and the only reason that appeal is being taken is to delay the responsibility, the fulfillment of the responsibility to pay Dontrell Stephens, and to put up a roadblock to our even being able to approach the legislature.
You said that the internal affairs on the dash cam video, are you saying that they didn't look at the dash cam video, or that they didn't notice the phone being in his right hand until it was pointed out to them by somebody during a deposition?
I am telling you that I took the deposition of internal affairs officers. We sat together on the videotape deposition and watched that dash cam video. They acknowledged that they could see the cell phone in Dontrell's hand as he was riding the bicycle, as he got off the bicycle, as he walked out of the view of the dash cam, as he fell back into the view of the dash cam. And their response to my questions was, gee, we never noticed that before. And when they were asked, well, now that you have noticed it, what do you intend to do about it? The response was nothing. And what has been done since then is nothing. Nothing by the sheriff's office, nothing by the state attorney's office, nothing by the attorney general's office, but something needs to be done.
Are there any strategies, like with the appeal, where you could access that award, or are you going to be forced to have to go through the legislature? Are there any other avenues to be able to access this money?
There are two ways that the sheriff's office can be compelled to pay a judgment in excess of $200,000. One way is to successfully defend the appeal and then to approach the legislature by way of a claims bill. It is a necessary prerequisite to processing a claims bill that the judgment be final, that is, that it be affirmed on appeal. The second alternative is to successfully challenge the ruling pre-trial that granted summary judgment on the direct claim against the sheriff's office for having a policy, practice, or procedure that was causally connected to this particular shooting. There is presently some difficult legal standard that has been defined by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in terms of being able to establish that causal connection. We presented arguments which we believe should ultimately prevail at the appellate court level. And if we are successful in restoring that claim, what will happen at that point is there'll be another jury trial. And that other jury trial will be directed at proving that the policies, practices, or procedures of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office did have a material causal connection to the use of force in this case, the use of excessive force and the violation of Dontrell's constitutional rights. The fact that his rights were violated has already been established. The amount of the damages that he sustained has already been established. But what would need to be reestablished in a second trial is that connection between policy, practice, and procedure and this particular injury. I hope that that was clear enough to you. It's not an easy legal principle.
And if that's established, then the sovereign immunity cap does not apply?
That's correct. That's correct. The federal civil rights law, 42 U.S. Code, section 1983, permits the recovery of damages in excess of state sovereign immunity caps. So the state sovereign immunity caps do not apply if that is established. Now, we've established a constitutional violation under 42 U.S.C. section 1983 on the part of the individual deputy sheriff. So we have a $23 million, $22 million and change judgment against the individual deputy sheriff. It's highly unlikely. I may be buying him lottery tickets, but it's highly unlikely that he is going to be able to pay that judgment for Dontrell. In fact, we should all buy him a lottery ticket. Let's hope he's very lucky someday, because then Dontrell will be.
So as I understand it, you're doing, it's like a double prong thing. You go to the legislature by and pursue the appeal.
That is correct. We are pursuing both avenues simultaneously, and it's really a triple prong effort to help Dontrell. There's a public relations aspect to this campaign as well, and that's what we're doing here today. So there are three things we are attempting to do in order to continue to assist our client. And they are to make the general public appeal that we are presently making, to pursue our appellate remedies with regard to the federal civil rights violation claim before the appellate court, and also, eventually, when the necessary prerequisites have been established, to pursue a claims bill. And we have already been contacted by legislators who are very concerned about these circumstances and have volunteered their assistance. I anticipate no problem at all in finding legislators who recognize the need to process this claims bill and to process it quickly. One of the things that makes this such an important case is that it is essential that every segment of the community, but particularly the minority segments of the community, recognize that the justice system works. The justice system works. Because if faith is lost in the system, then the inclination to resort to inappropriate alternatives increases. We have been fortunate in this community to have avoided those kinds of public reactions to injustice, but we're living on borrowed time. And we're living on borrowed time, especially if we cannot demonstrate to this community, to the state, and to the nation that justice can be achieved within the framework of the system. Extraordinarily important message to convey.
Jack, is there any precedent for the governmental entity to waive its sovereign immunity cap where they acknowledge that there has been some wrong?
Yes, it is possible for the sheriff's office to agree to waive their rights to appeal at this point, to agree to the entry of the judgment is finalized, and the sheriff's office can join in a request to the legislature to approve a claims bill. And there is substantial precedent for that to occur, not with respect to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, but there have been circumstances in the past where governmental entities have entered into settlements stipulating to the entry of a judgment and agreeing to cooperate in the processing of a claims bill. That would be wonderful.
Can I ask, Mr. Stephens, what do you think about all this?
Like, explain to me, what, about this whole situation going on.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's a very bad thing that's going on. It's terrible. But, I mean, I thank the jury for hearing me out. And also, thank all y'all for listening to me also. And, I mean, I think it's very terrible that what he did to me. But, I mean, you can't just hold a grudge against someone that did something wrong, because you can always forgive a person. So, I mean, I forgive him for what he did to me and everything, but I just feel like it was a bad thing that he did. But I don't feel no kind of way about this. I know that it's terrible and it's bad, but I mean, stuff happens in life, but it's like everything happens for a reason. But I feel like this is a terrible, bad thing that happened to me in my life.
Dontrell, tell everyone what your hopes are for the future.
Well, I plan on going back getting my GED, but it's steps that I have to take before I get there. And I also plan on going back to therapy and continue my therapy process so I will be able to walk again. Because, I mean, the doctor said that it's a possibility that I may not be able to walk again, but I've seen people that couldn't walk again that is walking, so it's never too late to give up on anything. And that's one of my goals that I want to continue in life. And once I reach that goal and accomplish that goal, then I can go on with the things I want to accomplish in life. But those are the two main things that I want to accomplish right now.
You and Sergeant Lynn passed each other quite a bit in the courthouse during those 8 days or whatever it was. Did he ever acknowledge you? Did he ever look at you that you noticed?
Yeah, I looked at him. He looked at me.
Did he ever say anything to you, or you ever say anything to him?
Nah, his lawyer spoken to me. He never spoken to me.
Thank you all very much. We really do appreciate your attention on this matter. Thank you.